I'm Catherine, 32, a software engineer at a startup no one had heard of. Growing up, my brother Daniel was always the golden child with his prestigious finance job. My parents constantly belittled my career, calling it my small job, compared to his Wall Street success. At our last family dinner, they laughed when I mentioned housing costs. Little did they know I had just purchased a $5.8 million mansion in cash, while Daniel was still applying for a loan. If you're enjoying this story, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button to join my journey. I grew up in an affluent Boston suburb, in a family where success had a very specific definition. From early childhood, it was clear my parents had different standards for my brother Daniel and me. Daniel was 4 years older, and in my parents' eyes, he could do no wrong. My father worked as an investment banker, putting in long hours and bringing home the kind of salary that afforded us a large house in an exclusive neighborhood. My mother was a successful surgeon at a prestigious hospital. They both came from wealthy families and had strong opinions about what constituted a respectable career path. Daniel took after our father. Even as a child, he showed interest in money and status. When he was 10, he started tracking stocks in a little notebook. My parents thought this was brilliant and bought him investment books aimed at adults. Meanwhile, when I showed interest in computers at age 6, taking apart an old desktop and trying to rebuild it, my mother called it making a mess, and my father said computers were just toys. Our family vacations always seemed to revolve around Daniel's interests. If he wanted to go skiing, we went skiing. If he wanted to visit New York to see the stock exchange, that became our family trip. My request to attend a technology convention one summer was dismissed as boring for the rest of us. I still remember my mother saying, "Catherine, honey, that's not a real vacation." In school, I excelled academically, often bringing home better grades than Daniel had at my age. But somehow my achievements were expected, while his were exceptional. When I brought home straight A's in my sophomore year of high school, my father glanced at my report card and said, "That's nice, Catherine." The same day, Daniel called to say he'd gotten a B+ on a college economics paper, and my parents took him out to a celebratory dinner. My junior year of high school, I won a statewide competition for a program I coded that helped organize emergency response data. The prize included a small scholarship and recognition at a ceremony in the state capitol. My parents couldn't attend because it coincided with one of Daniel's college baseball games where he wasn't even a starting player. "It's just a computer thing," my mother said. "There will be other opportunities. Daniel needs our support right now." By the time I was applying to colleges, Daniel was already at Princeton studying economics and finance. My parents had hired tutors, admissions consultants, and had called in favors from alumni friends to help him get in. When I expressed interest in attending MIT for their computer science program, my father scoffed. "Do you know how competitive that is? Maybe aim for something more realistic." I did get into MIT, but without the financial support my parents had provided Daniel, I couldn't afford it. Instead, I attended our state university, which had an excellent computer science program, and offered me a scholarship. When I announced my decision, my mother sighed and said, "Well, at least you'll get a degree," as if attending a public university was settling for mediocrity. The disparity in how we were treated became painfully obvious at the dinner following my college graduation. My parents hosted a small gathering at an upscale restaurant. Earlier that month, Daniel had received a promotion at his finance job in New York, and somehow my graduation dinner turned into a celebration of his accomplishment too. During the dinner, my parents presented Daniel with a set of keys to a brand new BMW to celebrate your promotion, son. My graduation gift, a $200 gift card to a department store, and a self-help book titled Navigating the Job Market Entry-Level Positions That Can Lead Somewhere. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my childhood bedroom and made a promise to myself. I would succeed on my own terms. If my family couldn't see my worth, I would build a life so undeniably successful they would have to acknowledge it. Not for their approval anymore, but for my own vindication. What I didn't realize then was that this determination born from years of being overlooked would drive me to create something far more valuable than the prestigious job title my parents wanted for me. My first job after college was at a mid-sized tech company called Data Secure. The salary was modest, but fair for an entry-level software engineer. I found a small apartment about 30 minutes from the office. Nothing fancy, but it was mine paid for with my own money. I felt proud of my independence, even if my living situation wasn't impressive by my family's standards. Meanwhile, Daniel had secured a position at Goldman Sachs right out of Princeton. Within 2 years, he purchased a luxury condo in Manhattan, though I later learned our parents had contributed significantly to his down payment. At family gatherings, my parents would bring this up constantly. Daniel just installed Italian marble countertops in his kitchen, my mother would announce to everyone. Then, turning to me, Catherine, are you still in that little rental? When are you going to start building equity? I worked hard at Data Secure, often staying late to improve my skills and learn from senior developers. My direct manager appreciated my dedication, but the company's hierarchy made advancement slow. After 3 years, I had received only minimal raises and no significant promotion. At a tech conference in San Francisco, I attended a panel on cybersecurity innovations. During the networking event afterward, I found myself talking with Sophia Lin, a venture capitalist known for funding innovative startups in the security sector. The problem with current authentication systems, I explained to her, is that they're still thinking linearly when threats have become multidimensional. Sophia raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting perspective. What would you do differently? For the next 30 minutes, I outlined my idea for a new security protocol that combined behavioral biometrics with contextual authentication factors. It was something I'd been developing in my free time, a solution to vulnerabilities I'd identified but couldn't address within DataSecure's rigid infrastructure. You should be building this, Sophia said when I finished. This could change the entire approach to digital security. Her words stayed with me. 2 weeks later, I submitted my resignation to Data Secure. I had decided to start my own company using my savings to fund the initial development of my security software. When I told my family about my decision over Sunday dinner, the reaction was predictably dismissive. "You're leaving a stable job to do what exactly?" my father asked, not looking up from cutting his steak. "I'm starting my own company. I've developed a new approach to authentication security that has real potential." "Oh, Catherine," my mother sighed. "Everyone thinks their ideas are special. Do you know how many startups fail in the first year?" Daniel chuckled. "About 90% ESIS. And most tech founders have experience or connections. What do you have?" "I have a good product," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. My father shook his head. "You're throwing away your future on a whim. At least at DataSecure, you had benefit stability." "It's not a whim," I insisted. "I've been developing this concept for over a year." "Well," my mother said, patting my hand condescendingly, "when this little project of yours doesn't work out, I'm sure DataSecure might take you back. Or Daniel could ask around at some firms for entry-level IT positions." Daniel nodded magnanimously, as if he was doing me a great favor. "Some of the bigger firms are always looking for support staff. Nothing glamorous, but it's a foot in the door." I left that dinner feeling both deflated and more determined than ever. For the next 6 months, I worked from my apartment coding for 18 hours a day, surviving on coffee and determination. I drained my savings and maxed out a credit card to fund the development. There were moments of doubt late at night when bugs seemed unfixable and the task too enormous for one person. Eventually, I realized I needed a team. Through online forums and professional networks, I connected with 3 other developers who believed in the project: Raj, a brilliant backend developer, Maria, a UX design specialist, and Taylor, a cybersecurity expert who had worked for the government. Together, we formed the core of what would become SecurePass Systems. We worked out of a shared workspace, taking side gigs to keep ourselves afloat while building our prototype. The team believed in my vision, something my family had never done. For the first time, I felt my ideas were truly valued. These people weren't supporting me out of obligation, but because they genuinely saw the merit in what I was creating. During those early months, I stopped attending most family functions. I couldn't bear another round of my parents asking when I was going to get a real job again, or Daniel offering to rescue me with his connections. I needed to focus all my energy on proving them wrong, even if they never acknowledged it. SecurePass Systems began in a corner of a co-working space in Cambridge. We had 4 desks pushed together, a shared whiteboard, and a determination that outweighed our limited resources. The first few months were a constant cycle of coding, testing, failing, and revising. Funding was our biggest challenge. I had invested all my savings, about 45,000, but developing sophisticated security software required more capital than we had. We approached several angel investors, but most were skeptical about investing in a security startup led by a young female CEO with no previous successful exits. "Your technology is interesting," one investor told me, "but you're too untested. Come back when you have a major client or more seasoned leadership." Technical challenges plagued us as well. Our first prototype had security vulnerabilities that Taylor identified during testing, forcing us to rebuild significant portions of the code. Maria and I disagreed about the user interface, leading to tense meetings and late-night debates. "Users won't adopt security measures if they're cumbersome," Maria insisted, "and they won't be protected if we prioritize convenience over security," I countered. Finding the balance between security and usability became our greatest challenge. For weeks, we iterated through designs, each time getting closer to something that felt right. The team dynamics were another hurdle. Raj, brilliant as he was, struggled with meeting deadlines and communicating his progress. Taylor, coming from a military background, found the startup's fluid structure frustrating. There were moments when I thought the whole thing might fall apart. One particularly difficult day, after a potential investor had walked out halfway through our pitch, Maria found me alone in the office, trying not to cry. "This isn't working," I said. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not cut out for this." Maria sat down beside me. "Catherine, do you still believe in what we're building?" "Of course I do." "Then that's all that matters. The rest is just noise." Her words helped me refocus. We reorganized our approach, established clearer processes, and kept pushing forward. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A mid-sized financial services company experienced a significant data breach despite using industry-standard security measures. Their CTO had attended the same tech conference where I met Sophia and remembered our conversation. He called asking if our solution might have prevented the breach. We quickly customized our prototype to demonstrate how it would have flagged the unusual access patterns that led to the breach. 2 days later, we presented to their executive team. By the end of the week, we had signed our first client a contract worth $500,000 for a year-long implementation and monitoring service. That first contract changed everything. We moved to a real office, hired 3 more developers, and refined our product based on real-world implementation. Word spread within the financial technology community about the small startup, with innovative security solutions. Within 6 months, we signed contracts with 2 more financial firms and a healthcare company. Despite this growing success, I kept the details private from my family. At the occasional dinners I attended, I would give vague answers about making progress and gaining clients. My parents didn't ask for specifics, seemingly uninterested in a business they assumed would fail. Daniel remained condescending, referring to my company as my tech thing. Meanwhile, Daniel had received another promotion at his firm and was looking to upgrade from his condo to a house in an exclusive suburb of New York. At the Thanksgiving dinner that year, it was the main topic of conversation. "Daniel is looking at a property in Scarsdale," my mother announced proudly. "The neighborhood is full of executives and doctors." "It's a competitive market," Daniel said. "But my firm's name carries weight with the mortgage lenders. They know I'm good for it." "We're helping with the down payment, of course," my father added. "It's important to invest in real estate in the right neighborhoods. Location is everything." My mother turned to me with a sympathetic smile. "Catherine, when you're ready to buy something, we could help you look at some condos in affordable areas. Nothing fancy, but ownership is better than renting." "I'm not interested in buying right now," I replied. "Don't wait too long," my father warned. "Every month you rent is money thrown away. Of course, you need to aim for something within your means. Not everyone can afford what Daniel is looking at." "You should aim for a starter home," Daniel suggested. "Something small you can fix up. That's realistic for someone in your position." I nodded and changed the subject, keeping my thoughts to myself. They had no idea that just a week earlier, I had met with a group of investors who were interested in acquiring a majority stake in Secure Pass Systems. The meeting took place in a sleek conference room overlooking Boston Harbor. 5 investors representing a major cybersecurity conglomerate sat across from me and my team. They had been tracking our growth and were impressed by our client retention rate and the elegance of our solution. We're prepared to offer $65 million for a 70% stake in SecurePass, their lead negotiator stated. You would remain as head of development with a generous compensation package. The number stunned me into momentary silence. From the corner of my eye, I could see Raj's jaw literally drop. Maria gripped my arm under the table. When I found my voice, I surprised even myself with my response. That's an interesting starting point for negotiations, but it significantly undervalues what we've built. The lead investor raised his eyebrows. What number did you have in mind? $85 million for 60%. I replied, maintaining eye contact. I retain control of product development, and we get seats on the board of the parent company. The room was silent for a moment before the investor smiled. You drive a hard bargain, Ms. Walker. We'll need to discuss this with our principals. 3 days later, they accepted my counteroffer, with some minor adjustments to the board seat arrangements. Just like that, my stake in the company was worth over $34 million. After taxes and setting aside funds for future investments, I had approximately $18 million in liquid assets. At 32 years old, I had become wealthy beyond what even my status-conscious parents could imagine, and none of them had any idea. With my newfound wealth, I began researching real estate not just as a place to live, but as a statement. I wanted something that would unmistakably signify success on a scale my family couldn't dismiss. Through my new business connections, I met Eliza Montgomery, a real estate magnate who took me under her wing. Real estate isn't just about the building, Eliza told me over lunch at her country club. It's about understanding the language of wealth and status. If you want to make a statement, you need to learn what different properties say about their owners. Under her guidance, I began researching the most exclusive neighborhoods in the Northeast. By coincidence or fate, one of the areas that caught my attention was the same affluent Connecticut community where Daniel had been house hunting. Greenwich, Connecticut was known for its old money estates and new mansions built by hedge fund managers and executives. The houses there weren't just homes, they were declarations of having arrived among the financial elite. While browsing listings in the area, I discovered the Henderson Estate, a historic property that had been recently renovated by a tech executive who was relocating to Silicon Valley. The main house was a stunning colonial revival, with 8,500 square feet, 6 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, situated on 4 acres, with manicured gardens, a pool house, and a separate guest cottage. The interior featured hand-carved woodwork, imported marble, and state-of-the-art smart home technology seamlessly integrated into the classic architecture. The asking price was $5.8 million. It was more house than I needed, but the moment I saw the virtual tour, I knew it was perfect, not just as a home, but as the ultimate response to years of condescension. Through discreet inquiries, I learned that Daniel was looking at a newer construction in the same community, a 4,200 square foot house listed at $2.3 million. He was in the process of applying for a mortgage with our parents, contributing to the down payment. I called the listing agent for the Henderson Estate, Vivian Richardson, and requested a private viewing. When I arrived at the property dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, Vivian's demeanor was noticeably cool. "This property typically attracts established executives," she said with a thin smile. "The maintenance costs alone are substantial. The annual property tax is over $75,000. "I'm aware," I replied calmly. "Shall we see the house?" As we walked through the grand entrance hall with its sweeping staircase, Vivian continued her subtle discouragement. "The previous owner was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Most of our buyers in this bracket are at similar career levels." I nodded politely, but said nothing about my financial situation. The house was even more impressive in person. The library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, the chef's kitchen with 2 islands, the primary suite with its own sitting room and fireplace. All of it spoke of a level of luxury I'd never experienced growing up, despite my parents' wealth. After the tour, we sat in the sunroom overlooking the gardens. Vivian pulled out the disclosure documents and purchase application. "If you're interested in pursuing this, we would need proof of funds. The seller is entertaining multiple offers and prefers a clean deal with minimal contingencies." "I understand," I said. "I'll be paying cash for the full amount." Vivian's pen paused mid-sentence. "Cash for the entire purchase price. Yes, and I can close as quickly as the seller would like. Her entire demeanor transformed. "Ms. Walker, forgive me for not recognizing your name. Are you in finance or—" "Technology," I replied. "Security software specifically." Within a week, my offer was accepted. The seller appreciated the clean, all-cash offer and rapid closing timeline. I moved up the closing date strategically, ensuring it would happen before my brother's mortgage could possibly be approved. 2 weeks after closing on the Henderson estate, I attended a family dinner at my parents' house. The conversation, as expected, centered around Daniel's house hunt. "The mortgage process is taking forever," Daniel complained. "But the house is perfect. 5 bedrooms, home theater, 3-car garage. The neighborhood is the most exclusive in Greenwich." "Worth the wait," my father assured him. "Property in that area only appreciates. Smart investment." "We're contributing 20% to the down payment," my mother informed everyone, including my aunt and uncle who were visiting. "It's what parents do when they can help their children establish themselves properly." Throughout dinner, I said little, letting the conversation flow around me. As dessert was served, my mother finally turned to me. "Catherine, we've been talking about ourselves all evening. What's new with you? Still at that apartment?" This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I took a sip of water, setting my glass down carefully. "Actually, I moved recently." "Oh, found a different rental?" Daniel asked absently, his attention on his phone where he was showing my father photos of his potential house. "No, I bought a place," I said casually. My mother's interest perked up slightly. "That's wonderful, dear. It's good to finally get on the property ladder, even if it's something small." "Where did you buy?" my aunt asked. "Greenwich, Connecticut, actually," I replied. Daniel's head snapped up. "Greenwich. There's nothing in Greenwich under $1 million. What did you buy a garden shed?" I pulled out my phone and opened the photos of my new home. "It's called the Henderson Estate. I moved in last week." I passed my phone to my aunt first, who gasped audibly. "Catherine, this is magnificent." The phone made its way around the table. When it reached Daniel, his face flushed red. "This can't be right. The Henderson estate that was listed for almost $6 million, 5.8, yes, I confirmed." My father snatched the phone from Daniel, scrutinizing the photos. "This is some kind of joke, or these aren't your photos. You couldn't possibly afford this property." "I paid cash," I said quietly. "The full amount." A stunned silence fell over the dining room. My mother was the first to recover. "Catherine, that's impossible. You run a tiny startup no one's ever heard of." "No one in this room has heard of," I corrected. "In the cybersecurity industry, we've made quite a name for ourselves." "Even successful small businesses don't generate that kind of capital," my father argued. "You're not making sense." "My company was acquired last month," I explained. "I retained a significant stake in management control." Daniel's face had gone from red to pale. "Acquired for how much?" he demanded. I smiled. "The total valuation was $85 million. My father's wineglass tipped over, spilling red wine across the white tablecloth. No one moved to clean it up. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Would you like to see the paperwork?" I offered. "I have copies of both the acquisition agreement and the house closing documents." "I always knew you were smart, Catherine," my mother suddenly declared, as if she'd been my champion all along. "I told everyone my daughter was a genius with computers." The abrupt shift in her tone made my stomach turn, but I kept my expression neutral. "Did you? I don't recall those conversations." "Well, of course I did," she insisted. "We've always been so proud of your unique interests." Daniel stood up abruptly. "I need some air," he muttered, striding out to the back porch. My father had recovered enough to switch into financial advisor mode. "Catherine, with this kind of windfall, you need proper wealth management. I have colleagues who specialize in sudden wealth situations. You should let me arrange some meetings." "Thank you, but I've already engaged a financial team," I replied, "and my business partners introduced me to some excellent investment advisors." "But family connections are different," he insisted. "You need people you can trust." The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. "Yes," I agreed. "Trust is essential. That's why I've chosen advisors who believed in me before I was wealthy." The aftermath of my revelation was chaotic. Daniel stormed back in from the porch, his face contorted with anger. "This is bull," he spat. "There's no way your little coding project is worth that much. You must have done something illegal." "Daniel," My mother gasped, though it wasn't clear if she was more shocked by his outburst or the implied accusation. It's a legitimate question. My father said, his banker's mind already calculating liability concerns. Catherine, these tech valuations can be inflated. If there's any financial irregularity, our company created a revolutionary multi-factor authentication system that's now being implemented by 3 of the top 10 financial institutions in the country, I said evenly. The valuation was based on solid revenue projections and existing contracts. Everything is completely legitimate. Why didn't you tell us? My mother asked, hurt creeping into her voice. We're your family. I looked at her directly. Would you have believed me? The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Daniel's phone rang and he stepped into the hallway to take the call. When he returned, his face was ashen. The mortgage fell through, he announced flatly. The lender wants additional documentation about income stability given market conditions. My parents immediately shifted their attention to Daniel's crisis, offering solutions and support. My father would call his banking connections. My mother suggested they could increase their contribution to the down payment. I excused myself shortly after driving back to my hotel, with a mixture of vindication and emptiness. The moment I had anticipated for so long had arrived, yet it felt hollow. Over the next few weeks, my parents made numerous attempts to connect. My father called with investment opportunities that required my capital. My mother suddenly wanted to help decorate my new home, suggesting we take a shopping trip to select artwork and furnishings. I've always had an eye for design, she insisted. I could help you make that beautiful house truly spectacular. Daniel, meanwhile, had stopped speaking to me entirely. His house purchase had indeed fallen through, and he had been forced to look at properties in less prestigious neighborhoods. I spent those weeks processing my emotions with a therapist, Dr. Larson, who specialized in family dynamics and sudden wealth syndrome. Your family is attempting to rewrite history, Dr. Larson observed during one session. They want to insert themselves into your success narrative. They never believed in me, I said. Now they want to pretend they did. How do you want to handle their sudden interest? She asked. It was a question I struggled with. Part of me wanted to shut them out completely to give them a taste of the dismissal I'd experienced for years. Another part recognized this as an opportunity to establish a healthier relationship on my terms. 3 weeks after the revelatory dinner, I decided to host a housewarming party. I invited my core team from SecurePass, my new business partners and friends who had supported me during the lean startup years. I did not invite my family. Of course, word got back to them. The evening of the party, as guests were enjoying cocktails on the terrace overlooking the illuminated gardens, my parents and Daniel arrived unannounced. Catherine, darling, my mother called out, air kissing my cheeks, as if we were the closest of confidants. What a stunning event! I'm so proud of you. My father immediately began introducing himself to my business associates. Catherine's father, he would say, shaking hands, always supported her technical interests. Knew she had the Walker business acumen. Daniel stood awkwardly by the bar, helping himself to expensive scotch and eyeing the crowd of successful tech entrepreneurs and investors with poorly disguised envy. After watching this uncomfortable integration for half an hour, I quietly asked my assistant to escort my family to the library. Once we were alone, I closed the heavy double doors. You weren't invited, I said simply. We're your family, my mother replied, genuinely confused. Of course we should be at your housewarming. We wanted to support you, my father added. Show our pride in your accomplishments. Now, after decades of dismissing everything I did, I kept my voice calm despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. You weren't proud of me when I won coding competitions. You weren't supportive when I started my company. You didn't believe in me until I had something you wanted access to. That's unfair, my father protested. After everything we've done for you. That broke something loose inside me. What exactly did you do for me? I asked, my voice quavering slightly. You paid for Daniel's Ivy League education, but told me to choose a realistic school. You helped him with the down payment on 2 homes, but suggested I look at affordable condos. You celebrated his every achievement while treating mine as cute distractions. We gave you every opportunity, my mother insisted, tears forming in her eyes. No, you gave Daniel every opportunity, I corrected. I had to fight for everything I achieved. And I did it without your help or encouragement. You're being dramatic, Daniel interjected. You had the same advantages I did. I turned to him. Did I? When's the last time you paid for anything entirely on your own? Your education, your homes? Even your job came through Dad's connections. My father stood up straighter. I will not be spoken to this way in any house, even if you did pay for it with your windfall. It wasn't a windfall, I said quietly. It was the result of years of work you couldn't be bothered to take seriously. And this conversation is over. I have guests to attend to people who believed in me before I was successful. You're choosing strangers over family, my mother asked incredulously. I'm choosing people who respect me, I answered. If you want to be part of my life going forward, you'll need to understand that our relationship has changed. I'm no longer the daughter who will accept scraps of approval. I make the rules now. They left my father fuming, my mother in tears. Daniel silent and stone-faced. As I rejoined my guests, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up to my family without doubt or apology. After the confrontation at my housewarming party, I didn't hear from my family for weeks. I focused on settling into my new home and consulting role with the company that had acquired SecurePass. I founded a venture fund specifically targeting women-led tech startups using my experience and capital to support other entrepreneurs who might be overlooked by traditional investors. The immensity of my new home sometimes felt overwhelming. All 8,500 square feet for just one person. Some evenings, I would wander from room to room, running my hands over expensive furnishings and wondering if this grand statement had been worth it. The material trappings of success provided a certain satisfaction, but I discovered they didn't fill the emotional void created by years of seeking validation from people who couldn't or wouldn't give it. To address this, I continued my therapy sessions with Dr. Larson, working through the complex emotions surrounding my family relationships and sudden wealth. Success can be isolating, Dr. Larson noted during one session, especially when it changes power dynamics so dramatically. I have everything I wanted, I admitted, but sometimes it feels empty. Because your motivation was external validation, she suggested. Now that you have it, you need to find intrinsic sources of fulfillment. I took her advice to heart, focusing on building authentic connections with people who valued me for myself, not my achievements or wealth. I started a mentorship program for young women in STEM fields, finding purpose in helping others navigate the obstacles I had faced. Through this program, I met incredible young women with brilliant minds and limited opportunities. Working with them rekindled my passion for technology beyond its monetary value. I found myself excited about coding again, staying up late to help a mentee debug a project, or brainstorming solutions to interesting problems. One rainy Sunday afternoon, about 2 months after the housewarming incident, the security system announced an unexpected visitor. To my surprise, it was Daniel alone. I hesitated before buzzing him in. When he entered the soaring foyer, he looked smaller, somehow less sure of himself than I'd ever seen him. Nice place, he said awkwardly, hands thrust into his jacket pockets. Thanks, I replied. Would you like a tour? He nodded, and I showed him through the house from the professional kitchen to the home theater, the indoor pool, and the wine cellar stocked with bottles I was just beginning to learn about. He remained unusually quiet throughout. Finally, we settled in the conservatory, rain pattering on the glass ceiling above exotic plants. I owe you an apology, Daniel said suddenly. Many apologies, actually. I waited, giving him space to continue. I've been a jerk to you our whole lives, he admitted. I knew Mom and Dad favored me, and I never stood up for you. I think part of me enjoyed being the golden child too much to risk it. His honesty surprised me. Why are you telling me this now? Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. Because seeing all this, what you've built on your own, made me realize something I've been avoiding. I'm not happy, Catherine. I never have been. What do you mean I hate finance? He said, the words tumbling out as if he'd held them back for years. I've always hated it. The stress, the cutthroat competition, the mindless pursuit of more money. I did it because it was expected, because it made Mom and Dad proud. You could do something else, I suggested. He laughed bitterly. At 36, after building my entire identity around being a successful finance guy. What else would I do? What would you want to do if our parents' expectations weren't a factor? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I always loved history. Teaching, maybe, working with kids. The admission hung between us a glimpse of a different Daniel than the one I'd grown up resenting. It's never too late to change direction, I said. Trust me on that. Easy for you to say. You followed your passion and struck gold. I struck gold because I followed my passion, I corrected, and because I worked incredibly hard at something I believed in even when no one else did. Daniel nodded slowly. I've never had to do that. Everything was always arranged for me. The right schools, the right introductions, the right career path. I never had to figure anything out for myself. That sounds more like a disadvantage than a privilege when you put it that way. He smiled ruefully. Maybe it was. Look at us now. We talked for hours that day, really talked for perhaps the first time in our adult lives. Daniel shared his frustrations and fears, and I spoke about my struggles building Secure Pass and the loneliness that sometimes came with success. By the time he left, something had shifted between us, a tentative bridge forming over the chasm of our different experiences. I can't promise Mom and Dad will ever really understand, Daniel said at the door. Their worldview is pretty fixed. But I'm trying to see things differently. That's all anyone can do, I replied. Over the following months, Daniel and I continued to rebuild our relationship. He enrolled in night classes for a teaching certification and began volunteering at a history museum on weekends. Our parents were bewildered by his career exploration, but he stood firm for perhaps the first time in his life. My relationship with my parents progressed more slowly. I established clear boundaries, limiting contact to occasional dinners, and refusing to discuss financial matters with my father. My mother made awkward attempts to bond suddenly interested in technology and asking surface-level questions about my work that revealed her fundamental lack of understanding or genuine interest. During this period of family recalibration, I met Jake Harrison at a charity auction for STEM education. He was an architect specializing in sustainable design with kind eyes and a quiet confidence I found immediately attractive. I bid against you for that coding camp sponsorship, he admitted when we were introduced. Did you? I smiled. Well, I'm glad my deep pockets could support a good cause. I'm just glad the money's going to help kids who remind me of my younger self, he replied, computer obsessed and socially awkward. His self-deprecating humor and genuine passion for supporting young technologists drew me in. When he asked for my number, I hesitated, wary of people interested in my wealth rather than myself. I should warn you, I said. I come with some complications, financial ones. Jake looked confused for a moment, then understanding dawned. Oh, you think I… No, I actually had no idea who you were until about 5 minutes ago, when someone whispered your net worth in my ear. I just thought you had interesting things to say about educational access. His frankness made me laugh. In that case, I'd love to continue this conversation over dinner. Our first date turned into 4 hours of conversation that ranged from architecture to coding childhood dreams to future goals. Jake had built his firm from scratch, turning down opportunities with prestigious practices to pursue his vision of environmentally responsible design. He understood the entrepreneurial drive that had pushed me forward, but he'd never faced the family dynamics that had complicated my journey. As we began dating, I was initially guarded, waiting for the other shoe to drop. When would he start suggesting investments or asking for introductions to wealthy connections? But those moments never came. Instead, Jake maintained his own career and interests, genuinely celebrating my successes without trying to insert himself into them. For Christmas that year, I had planned to host a small gathering at my home. Jake would be there along with friends from my Secure Pass days and some of my mentees from the Women in Tech program. I had also, after much consideration, invited my parents and Daniel. The morning of Christmas Eve, my mother called. Your father's come down with something, she explained. We won't be able to make it tomorrow. The excuse was transparent, especially when I later learned they had attended a neighbor's party that same evening. But instead of the hurt I might have felt before, I recognized this as their inability to adapt to our new relationship dynamic. They couldn't be equal participants in my life. They could only be authorities or absent. I spent Christmas with people who valued me for who I was, not what I represented or could provide. Jake and I cooked together, making a magnificent mess of my professional kitchen. We laughed with friends, exchanged thoughtful gifts, and ended the evening by the fire planning a trip to Japan, where I'd been invited to speak at a technology conference. Daniel did come bringing his new girlfriend, a museum curator, who seemed to bring out a gentler side of him. Watching my brother discuss historical exhibits with genuine enthusiasm, I saw glimpses of who he might have been without our parents' rigid expectations. It wasn't the family Christmas I had once imagined, but it was real warm and authentic. As I looked around at the life I had built, I realized I no longer needed my parents' approval to feel complete. The validation I had sought for so long had ultimately needed to come from within. It's been just over a year since I bought the Henderson estate and upended my family's perception of me. In that time, I've transformed not just my physical surroundings, but my entire approach to life. My most successful venture hasn't been financial, but personal, creating the Catherine Walker Foundation for Women in Technology. We provide scholarships, mentorship, and seed funding to young women pursuing careers in tech, especially those from backgrounds where support is limited. Watching these brilliant minds flourish when given resources and encouragement has brought me joy that no luxury purchase could match. Daniel made the leap 6 months ago, leaving his finance career to teach history at a private school. He's happier than I've ever seen him coming alive in the classroom, in ways he never did in the boardroom. Our relationship has evolved into something I never thought possible, a genuine friendship based on mutual respect rather than competition or resentment. The kids actually listen to me, he told me recently, wonder in his voice. And when they understand something for the first time, their faces just light up. It's better than any deal I ever closed. My parents have made halting progress toward understanding. After several months of minimal contact, they agreed to family therapy sessions grudgingly at first, then with increasing openness. The first session was disastrous, with my father walking out, when the therapist suggested he consider how his expectations had affected his children. But they returned the following week, and slowly painful truths have emerged. "We thought we were preparing you for the real world," my mother admitted during one session. "We pushed Daniel towards stability and security because that's what we understood. And you pushed me away from what I loved because you didn't understand it," I added. My father, still struggling with the role reversal, nodded stiffly. The world changed. The skills valued when I built my career aren't the same ones that matter now. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, a start. Last month, I invited them to dinner at my home, the first time they'd been back since the housewarming confrontation. Jake cooked his easy warmth, helping to diffuse the lingering tension. As we sat in the dining room, my father looked around at the space I'd created. "I was wrong about you, Catherine," he said quietly. "About your potential, your choices. I'm sorry I couldn't see what you were capable of." The words I had longed to hear for decades finally came, and surprisingly, I found they no longer held the power I'd attributed to them. I appreciated his acknowledgement, but my sense of self-worth no longer depended on his validation. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot to me." Later that evening, as Jake and I walked through the gardens, he took my hand. "You seem different tonight. Lighter somehow." "I think I finally realized something," I replied. "I bought this house to prove something to my family, but the person who really needed convincing was me. I needed to believe I was worthy of success on my own terms. And now I know that the house, the money, none of it defines me. What matters is what I build, who I help, how I live authentically." 2 weeks later, Jake proposed, not with an ostentatious display of wealth as might be expected in our circles, but during a simple hike to watch the sunrise. I said yes without hesitation, certain that our relationship was based on mutual respect and genuine love, not status or advantage. My journey has taught me lessons I never expected when I set out to prove my worth through financial success. True success means living authentically, not meeting others' expectations. Money amplifies who you already are. It doesn't change your core. Family can be both chosen and biological. Setting boundaries is an act of self-love. And perhaps most importantly, forgiveness benefits the forgiver more than the forgiven. Was it satisfying to prove my parents wrong about my potential? Absolutely. There's a certain vindication in success against all expectations. But the real victory wasn't buying a multi-million-dollar estate or achieving financial independence. It was finding self-acceptance and building a life that feels good from the inside, not one that just looks good from the outside. If you're struggling with family expectations or fighting to be seen for who you truly are, remember that validation from others is fleeting. The only approval that truly matters is your own. Have you ever had to prove your worth to people who underestimated you? How did it change you? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, success is what you define it to be, not what others expect it to be.